Welcome back to the War Academy, where the more you learn, the less you lose. Today I'm here with Horace and York, and we've got the 10th edition core rules, and we're going to go over all of them. But let's not bore you with the intros. Let's get right to it. First thing we're going to look at is deployment abilities. Deep Strike has changed slightly, so you have to be 9 inches horizontally from enemy models. So this is to stop people from using a flying unit that's right on top of a piece of terrain and just charging an inch to get you, or taking minus their height off of their charge. You won't be able to do that anymore. They fixed it with just one word. It's amazing. York, why don't you tell us about the Scouts rule?
Oh, I will. Scouts has now basically replaced the pre-game move. It's now Scouts X, so units can range from probably 6 to 12 inches. It just replaces the pre-game move. And Infiltrators stayed pretty much exactly the same.
Horace, you supplied us with these rules, so why don't you tell us about the leader category here?
The leader is probably the most interesting of the new deployment abilities. At the start of the battle, you have to determine which of your leader units will be attached to other units. These units are detailed on the back of the leader's datasheet, and it is pretty restrictive. While a bodyguard unit, the new term that they have for the units that the leaders are attached to, contains a leader, you allocate all wounds to this bodyguard unit, even if the attached leader already has wounds.
Does that mean they're going to remove the bodyguard ability entirely?
I think so.
Absolutely. Replacing either you're going to start the game attached to a unit, or you're going to be a lone operative, which means you can't be shot outside of 12 inches.
That's pretty nice. So no more have to worry about character words. Yeah, go for it.
That's interesting. It's going to either completely affect how the Court of the Archon for the Drakari works, or if the models are just going to be completely removed, considering they haven't really got any remodels.
Most likely you'll be able to put that Archon, he'll be in that Court of the Archon, like in part of that squad. So it won't. The sad part about that, though, is you won't be able to use his shadow field, right? Because like the Archon's 2-up and on that he's known for, you're going to have to, until he's the only one left, then you'll be able to start taking the damage on him and use his toughness and his saves. But also, if you have a guardsman with a Ogren, if that's allowed, you'll be able to use the Ogren's toughness basically for that leader until the Ogren are gone.
Exactly. It just allows you to eat, and also that plays into the new precision word that GW has not officially revealed yet, but apparently these people know exactly what they're talking about.
Because the Slith already had a unique bodyguard keyword. It was cold-blooded bodyguard. So I wonder if that's going to come back, or if there's going to be different levels of bodyguard.
They'll be a bodyguard unit most likely.
They'll just be a unit that the Archon can attach. Or here's the tinfoil hat. They give him a lone operative while they're within some inches of him.
Oh, that's true. And then you'd be able to still kind of utilize this shadow. Yeah, but like you can't really use the whole point about using the shadow field. So I mean, either way, you still get to use it eventually. But yeah, the leader. This is what they did before. 5th edition and 6th edition, I believe, had the attached characters. This also is going to mean that most likely there's going to be retinues coming out in box sets. So think of Marnius Calgar. He's got those Vicatrix guard or whatever. I remember when that came out, that was during like when you attach heroes to units, and they decided to make that cool box set. So I could see every army getting, here's a cool retinue unit for this guy, or they release a character, and instead of selling that character like by itself for cheap, you buy the character and it comes with his retinue, and they get to sell it to you for $60.
That's a very insightful. Do you remember the rumor engine that was posted a couple weeks ago? I had the kind of Archon flesh cape. Maybe they're going to do it a Court of the Archon with Archon, brand new sculpt.
Yeah, they could definitely. It would be a really cool thing, because people love Vicatrix guard just because they're like that retinue honor guard, and those things are still made of metal, like they're pewter models, and I think that's definitely a cool opportunity. But let's move on to the next part. All right, so placing units in a strategic reserve. So in a strike force game, you're going to get a maximum of 500 points to put in reserve. No more power level. Hopefully, power level is gone. The biggest change here is there's no more coming out of the board edge, like your own board edge right next to somebody. It's always going to be 9 inches away, and then deep strike is pretty much normal, right, guys?
Yeah, so far it seems like it is just like the old ones, except for, as you've noted, you can't charge your own deployment zone anymore. GSC are in shambles.
And then the deep strike does not count towards that 500 points, right?
No, it
Correct.
doesn't.
Okay, and then also these with all overall strategic heroes, so including deep strike, it says it cannot exceed 25% of your total limit points limit
That
for that
is
battle.
that is specifically for strategic
That is
reserves,
just strategic
not for
reserve.
deep strike.
So yeah, okay, because that's why it's 500. That totally makes sense. So let's move on now to reinforcements. All right, so coming in from reserves, reinforcements wise, like it's pretty much the exact same thing as it was before. We don't really see too much changes, but feel free to pause the video and read it over for yourself. Next up, we have the command phase, and this is similar when it comes to how much CP you get. So you get one maximum CP from your regular turn, then you can get the one extra from like a relic, but you can't get more than 2 per turn.
We're starting to review the command phase rules, and they're pretty much the same. However, both players at the start of each command phase will now generate their first command points. Both players get one, and then you will be limited to an additional one per battle round, or per your side. Then we move on to the battle shock.
So the morale phase has now been renamed to the battle shock phase. It is now done in the command phase, and it's taken when your unit drops below half strength. Same thing as before. Morale, you roll 2d6. If it's equal to or greater than your leadership of your unit, the test is passed. However, if you fail a battle shock test, you lose objective control. If you fall back, you must take a desperate escape, a very interesting and new mechanic that's going to be in 10th edition. And the controlling player cannot receive any stratagems at all on this unit. So that's going to affect quite a few armies in different ways, I feel.
The stratagems, they simplify. I love that they have this little stratagem key. This when the stratagem is used, either player's turn, your turn, opponent's turn, etc. And they have a little category for what each stratagem does. It doesn't seem like that's matters, right? You know,
No, I don't
okay,
think it
just
does.
extra stuff. So command reroll, that's the exact same, right? But it says you can reroll that roll, test, or saving throw, and that's a wound roll, a damage roll, a saving throw, advance roll, charge roll, desperate escape, hazardous test, or just after you have rolled the dice to determine the number of attacks. So then they have counteroffensive. This looks like it's the exact same as it was. This is their interrupt stratagem, and then they have a
Yep.
new one, the epic challenge, and this looks fun because this used to be how it was, where you had to issue challenges to people in 40k. I love that, but now when your character and your retinue basically fight another character in their retinue, you can give your character precision, meaning your character's attacks go directly against that other character. That's pretty cool. So you can fight and have like almost 2 fights going on in one, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
That is
awesome.
correct.
I love it. Now we got a bunch of, and these are all universal stratagems, right? Yeah, everybody's gonna get these. So
Everybody gets these.
let's go ahead and let's know about Insane Bravery.
Insane Bravery is the exact same as it was before. It auto passes a unit in their battle shock phase. Now, what's interesting about this one is it used to be 2 CP, and you could only use it 1 time per game in 9th edition. In 10th edition, it looks like you get to use it as many times as you want, and it's 1 command point.
Nice. And grenade, they've definitely changed too. I'm loving this new change.
So grenades are no longer a ranged weapon on the unit status sheet. Instead, they are now a stratagem that is used on a unit that has the grenade keyword. What you do is you select one enemy unit that is not within engagement range, and they are within 8 inches and visible to your grenade unit. You roll 6d6 for each 4-up. The selected target enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound.
So that's cool. So it's like basically you're gonna do an average of 3 mortal wounds. And what I could see happening is things like Death Guard have that biologist like grenade guy. He'll probably say something like, "Oh, grenades go off on a 3," or maybe you attach this little character to this unit. You know, grenades go off on a 3. So much stronger than grenades are now because they definitely felt really lackluster for grenades.
And this is also it bypasses the old rule of you could only a single model from your unit could fire a grenade. Now the entire unit just chucks their grenades and
Yeah,
they get to
and
shoot.
that's much more realistic for sure. Plus mortal wounds. I mean, that makes like your guardsmen can now kill some Marines. Before, like you had to give the guardsmen a plasma gun to be able to do something like that. The and then we had,
Eldar Guardians can now kill a Carnifex.
so before, but yeah, exactly. And then back in the day, one of the other big changes back in the day is we had a rule called tank shock. So when you played 40k, like I think this is a 5th edition, 4th edition, the you were either in a building fighting or you were on the streets being run over by tanks. Like empty rhinos were a dangerous thing, and you could not just walk between terrain. You had to move constantly from train to train and through ruins because of tank shock. So, York, why don't you tell us what they did to tank shock?
Tank shock's pretty interesting. You roll a number of d6 equal to the weapon's strength characteristic. So whatever the strength characteristic of your vehicle is, whether that has a weapon on it. So Dark Eldar Raiders will have blade veins, potentially adding extra strength with. So you could be
Yeah,
rolling
good
even
point.
more d6s. Strength characteristic is greater than the enemy unit's toughness characteristic. You roll 2 additional d6, which is pretty fantastic. But on a 5 up, you suffer 1 mortal wound. But it is a maximum of 6 mortal wounds. So there is a nice cap to it, but it is still relatively strong. And if Dark Eldar still retain I can't remember the name of the witch cult obsession, but the one that gives you mortal wounds on charges, this could be a nice interaction.
For sure. And just being able to have your tanks do damage, like not right now where it's like my Land Raider charged these Gretchen, and the Gretchen just stopped it dead in its tracks. That's ridiculous. I like to be able to run things over. I think that's fun. And next we got rapid ingress, and this looks so fucking. I can say that, right? Yeah, whatever. This looks so
It's your
fucking cool.
channel.
It's my channel. I'll do what I want. This is cool. The when you do this at the end of your opponent's movement phase, you select a unit that's in reserve, and then that unit can arrive from reserve. So if someone's getting too close to your tank, or maybe your Tower Thurl's under siege, you can just drop in some crisis suits to be like, "Yo, what are you or where are you going? I don't know, whatever." But main thing, but yeah, just be able to drop in and shield anything that you want that you don't want your opponent near. This makes Deep Strike cool because right now Deep Strike is weird because the person that goes first usually has a better Deep Strike, but then Deep Strike counters Deep Strike really well. This is just a whole new brain game that you can play with that Deep Strike.
It says in your reserves as well. So you could move
Yeah,
something in, like, so for example, you could put a Tantalus in reserves, wait for your enemy to move forward to shoot you, then take the Tantalus out.
that's
And then
awesome.
that could be a huge, like, oh, you made a fucking mistake, bud. You got 12 shots coming down on you right now.
the
And also, the important thing to note is that it says you cannot use the stratagem to enable a unit to arrive on the battlefield during a battle round in which it would not normally be able to do so in. Based on what we've read from Deep Strike, you can Deep Strike Rapid Ingress on your opponent's phase turn 1.
Interesting. Oh, that makes it way a lot. But for that whole like, because Deep Strike feels a little lackluster when you go second. It feels more oppressive when you can Deep Strike right away. That's
Oh,
awesome. I love that
this
stratagem.
this is actually super good. Remember the Corpuscari Electro Priest I was telling you about with the Assault Tree weapons?
Mm-hmm.
So if you drop those in between, like the enemy's moving up with melee, and then you drop down these Corpuscari Electro Priests in between you and them and the object they're trying to charge, you've got 60 shots on Overwatch shooting into these dudes with double exploding sixes.
Yeah, no,
Like, it's
that's
probably going to be different in intent, but at the
and
same time, this is like an ultimate denial tool.
yeah,
But yeah,
Speaking of
yeah,
Overwatch,
is over.
it
What is it?
changed a lot.
24 inches of that enemy unit. Wow.
Interesting.
Note when it's done, when your opponent's movement or charge phase just after an enemy
Ah.
unit is set up, so this is Auspex, or when an enemy unit gets a
Okay,
normal
no.
Wow.
advanced
Okay, so the
fall,
Corpuscari just got even better because it's
fall
within
back.
24 inches.
When they fall back or
Interesting.
when they charge.
So for 2 CP, you're wiping a very. You could probably kill.
Overwatch is 1 CP.
No, exactly, but I mean the rapid
Oh, with
ingress,
Rapid Ingress. Yeah.
Yeah.
rapid ingress, and then
Fire
or it's so
Overwatch.
it depends. So you can use rapid ingress at the end of your opponent's charge or movement phase. So before they do their charge, you can be within 24 inches, and then when they charge, 60 shots going into a model with double exploding sixes.
Yeah, or even things that getting you won't be able to really get rerolls on them too much, but you might get some like reroll ones. There's ways to make Overwatch better. Flamers, right? Are
Yeah.
flamers gonna still auto hit? Yeah.
Flamer still auto hit.
So yeah, you can deep strike put some flamers on your Terminators, just deep strike some Terminators, and
Mhm.
then flame the thing that's about to charge you. Definitely, there's a lot of big brain stuff that can come from. I'm loving all these stratagems. Yeah, we got go to ground, and this one is when you're being targeted in the shooting phase. You select an infantry unit, and it's going to get a 6-up invuln, and it also has the benefit of cover. So dense cover, from what we can tell, is gone. No more dense cover. So cover is just +1 armor. So go to ground, +1 save, 6-up invuln. So if you play Age of Sigmar, it's similar to like all-out defense, but it only works on infantry, right? Yeah.
That's what it specifies.
We got smoke screen.
Smokescreen has quite had a glow up.
Select a unit that's being targeted, and until the phase, you have the benefit of covers and stealth. What's stealth do?
Stealth is -1 to be hit
That
on
makes sense.
ranged attacks.
That makes sense. Things like Dark Shroud, giving off its big, like a
Hmm.
stealth bubble, probably.
Wonder if that will
Yeah.
stack.
No, I don't think it will, and that's part of the reason why they're using this. So if anybody played 8th edition when it first started, there was no rule that units couldn't stack. And I remember one of the most oppressive armies was Dark Angels using 4 to 5 Dark Shrouds to make it so like every army hit on 7s. And that was a thing. So now we don't have to worry about that because all those cool buffs that make us sound nerdy when we're like -1 to hit rolls, we can just say, oh, I got stealth, dude. We just sound cooler, right? Our girlfriends don't make fun of us as much when they're in the other room and we're playing Warhammer. But yeah, we got heroic intervention next. Is this the same? So one unit that's within 6 inches. Most are
One
3 inches.
unit.
Wait, 1 unit? 1 unit?
Anything can heroic.
Declare. Yeah.
Could you combine that with tank shock? Oh, you're not charging, so no.
Oh, you're charging.
Oh, it counts as
Let me
charge.
read it. Your opponent's charge phase just after an enemy unit into charge phase. One unit from your army that is within 6 inches of that enemy unit and would be eligible to declare charge against that enemy as if it were your charge phase. The effect is your unit now declares a charge that targets only that enemy unit, and you resolve that charge as if it were your charge
And
phase.
Corpuscari Electro Priest just got even better.
You
Mortal
love
wounds
those
on a
things, don't you?
charge. Dude, they are so good.
This is
What's
awesome.
interesting to note is we see a cool keyword here. Vehicle units cannot heroically intervene unless they are walkers.
Oh.
This is amazing because like there's a lot of characters that I feel like could be considered walkers, and they never really had that interaction. The fact that a dreadnought is different than a vehicle. Like you can make a tank, and then there's a dreadnought, and like a tank can't go Pacific Rim on somebody. The walker is a keyword that should have been here a while ago. But now
Is that the
say you have
first time we've seen
poison. What do you?
Walker?
Yeah, this is the first time think I've seen walker. It might have been. I've played. There's been a lot of 40K in my life.
I think
So
at
here's the
least in
question.
ninth, it's just vehicles.
You got Dark Eldar, right? And Dark Eldar have poison, and poison doesn't work against vehicles. Do you think it'll work against walkers?
Maybe walkers will have like an open chassis, kind of like you could shoot
Well, I
the
mean, what if it
driver out of
doesn't?
them.
What if a Dreadnought probably doesn't? But I'm
Maybe
assuming
there
then
might
that
be
means that
dreadnought, or
big.
maybe
What
like
about a Wraith Lord? Right now, a Wraith Lord is a monster. It's not a vehicle, so it's affected by poison. But a Wraith Lord's probably going to get keyword Walker, so I'd assume that. Yeah, I'm just something
maybe
to think about.
Walker can because you can move through units now. So maybe Walker has different kind of movement abilities over terrain and ignoring sort
Could
of
be.
maybe
Speaking of moving through
the
units, why don't you explain to us the movement phase?
yeah. So essentially, the fly keyword is not as great as it is now because you can now just move through your own units. It's sort of fantastic. No more finagling models around models to move through certain things. It's all just very simple, straightforward, native kind of understanding of how you'd play the game. So it's a lot more streamlined, a lot more simple, and a lot easier to understand for new players.
The death of parking lotting.
Yeah.
However, key point: monsters and vehicles will block each other and themselves.
Yes, and that's important because how many games have you played where I've played games where you fight someone in a channel because the whole point is you need to be able to 300 people in this game. If you have a super elite army, you need to funnel people. Sometimes it's your only way to win. And when a big like Lord of Skulls goes charging in and then he realizes, oh, my rest of my army doesn't fit, people waste stuff, and that's part of the strategic big brain it takes to play this game. But
No, you can move through a friendly vehicle or friendly monster, but friendly monsters and friendly vehicles cannot move through other monsters or vehicles.
gotcha. So it's just yeah, basically it's affecting Monster Mash then, like
Monster Mash and
yeah.
vehicles.
So your Monster Mash is going to be better when it's got a few infantry in it.
It's exactly the same as it is now. Your infantry just get a little bit better.
Yeah, and it's kind of like how knights can walk over stuff or whatever.
Mhm.
And then yeah, so movement is there.
The
Double
next
checking
big
it
thing
over.
is Desperate Escape.
Fallback moves, including they have Desperate Escape. So it's basically the same thing as Desperate Breakout right now, but it doesn't cost a CP. and you're gonna on a 1 or 2, you're dead, right?
If you pass over enemy models.
Oh yeah, okay, but yeah, that's when you desperate breakout for sure. So but the cool thing about this being a desperate escape test is there could be points where something could be so terrifying, like this Tyranid Hive Tyrant comes up to you maybe, and you can use a stratagem or something that would make someone make a desperate escape test, or there's the fact that they have that as a keyword. I think is a way that you can make it in the game more, because desperate breakout doesn't happen very often. How many times have you guys desperate breakout in the past like 6 months?
Never. I usually just die.
I've
Okay, yeah,
used it
I think
once.
I've used it once in all my life, and I play a lot
Maybe
of
I think
40k.
I've seen it used against me at least once or twice.
I've had people use it against me for sure, but I don't like to put myself in a situation where I would need to desperate breakout. And obviously, this is really bad for really elite units. You don't want to even think about risking this if you're playing Custodes or something. But I guess if you've got a bunch of gaunts that need to move to get to an objective, maybe I don't know. But yeah, so basically it's desperate breakout, but it doesn't cost a CP anymore.
I think there's going to be some pretty interesting interactions of factions like Harlequins, maybe a couple of Grey Knight units that can pass through units. The main interaction I'm thinking of is Death Jesters and troops. You could move troops through units, setting them up through terrain, and then have a Death Jester blow up a unit, and then they retreat through the Harlequin troop and then take mortal wounds. You could do a lot of kind of movement shenanigans with that.
Yeah, and like I said, I like that it's a thing that is actually a rule. So you couldn't before. I can't cast a spell that makes a unit make a desperate breakout attempt, but now that it's desperate escape and it's a test, it can be used in I think a lot of cool ways for sure. So then we got moving over terrain. By the way, these rules were not brought to you by Ford. They were brought to us by Horace, and it is not his hearsay. Moving over terrain. Does anything real special? Models can move freely
Oh,
over
very
terrain
special.
and
You
lessen
can
height.
so in 10th edition of 40k potentially, the terrain matters a little bit less for most units. You can now move freely over terrain features that are 2-inch or less in height. However, you still have to pay the normal vertical movement for terrain features that are 3 inches and greater.
Cool. So
Flying,
in the debris terrain, that's what everybody ends up like. Can I move over this? Like if you have a tree there or a pipeline, you
mhm,
can just go right over it.
you can just go right over it as if it weren't
Perfect. Because
there.
but it cost movement to do that in ninth edition, right?
It
Like, you had
did,
to
and
go
now
an
it
inch
doesn't.
up, and like, oh, your movement's -2. When you have a 5-inch moving orc, you just kind of sad face.
That's what made
Now,
flying so good, and
Yeah.
troops like Harlequins
Well,
and
that's the
Grey
one thing
Knight
that slowed
Interceptors.
down infantry, though. Do we have something that slows down infantry? Or
I
infantry just
don't know.
flying units still?
I don't know if we have anything specific yet.
Okay,
We
we
do
might
not
get
have the
some more.
terrain rules.
We don't have the terrain rules. There we go. So that's not part of this little collection. This is the core rules that we're going over. So
Yes.
terrain rules. Might better subscribe to this channel, right? Because like if I have these rules so early, there's a good chance. I think I might have the terrain rules early too. What do you
Yeah,
think?
you never know,
Potentially.
boss.
Oh,
I'd
look at
subscribe.
the orcs are saying to subscribe. How many orc players do I have? Yeah, you guys
Yeah,
gotta subscribe. Come on.
subscribe.
Something they're doing? That's all I got. My only orc impersonation. But hit that subscribe button. We'll probably have this train first. You're at the right channel. Flying units. Have flying units changed?
Flying units have changed. You now measure direct path. You no longer ignore a horizontal and vertical movement. You just move the shortest possible path from your unit to their intended location,
Is
measuring the
this going
distance.
to work in the charge roll?
This
Is,
does, in fact, work on the charge
so
roll.
that means you can finally fly over terrain when you charge?
It sounds like it.
Yeah, that was a great way. Like, you could block your opponent because your opponent would come in with his assault marines, or the blood angel player comes in sanguine guard, and then he just gets stuck on every piece of terrain and can't jump your models. But that was all because of the fact that they couldn't use the word horizontal for some reason, or Games Workshop couldn't think of the word horizontal. But now we have that, so now you can actually go over things again. Shooting phase has basically remained the same. You can't shoot with something that advanced. You can't shoot with something that fell back. We have a new rule called lone operative, and this is going to go on things like Gilliman and the big characters that don't attach to other units. And a lone operative is a character that cannot be shot if he's over 12 inches away. So now you don't have to worry about that that bodyguard unit and protecting and character protection. This is just going to be a lot easier because a character will be attached to a unit, or he'll have lone operative, or he's intended to be shot. So if a character, there might be a character with 11 wounds that has lone operative, and anytime someone can't interact with you, that's just a good thing. Is there anything else that changed about the shooting phase?
Other than that, it does not look like much has changed other than the big guns never tire rule.
Oh, good point. So, is that's the main thing that made so vehicles don't take -1 to hit?
No.
I'm
So
sorry,
the
shoot in
big
combat.
Oh yes, lots have changed with that. So monsters and vehicles are eligible to shoot in their controlling player's shooting phase while they are within engagement range of one or more enemy models. They shoot within their own. They shoot into the combat of the units that they're fighting with at a -1 penalty. The blast rule appears to have gotten removed. In addition, probably the scariest change, especially for Tyranid and Daemon players, is that vehicles and monsters in engagement range are now eligible to be shot outside of the currently engaged unit. Your hammerhead can now pop that tank that's in combat with your fire warriors.
So this is a huge way on how vehicles are now something that we're going to see. I do kind of worry about guns becoming too good again, because that's always the problem with 40k is that guns are too good. Melee seems pointless. Why to bring a knife to a gunfight? Shooting is king in the end of every edition. Been that way, and it always ends up going that way. But we'll see if
I still
this
think
doesn't make it too much. I don't know. We'll see how it works. But either way, tanks are going to be oppressive.
Same with monsters. In addition to this, keying off of your talk of your love of your Dark Shroud, we get the final rule that was not yet previewed but was mentioned: stealth. Each time a model in this unit is targeted that has this ability, you subtract 1 for the hit roll versus this unit. So Bellicor gives out an aura of -1 to hit. Should be.
Yeah, that's how all those things will work. Almost every army in the game has access to -1 to hit.
That's how they use their army stratagems.
Totally. So moving on to the hit roll, basically the same thing. Hit
The
roll of
entire
1 always fails. A hit can't be modified more than 1 or +1. And
hit rolls of 6, unmodified hit rolls of 6
our
are called
crits.
critical hits.
new keyword, critical hit. I think that's going to sort of interact with different armies in certain ways. You're no longer going to have exploding sixes. It's going to be more you have critical
Criticals
hit
will probably
as the
do
keyword.
things. Oh, that's cool. You could probably do a lot with that. You could do, critical hits, reduce this unit's thing by this or something, or
We have
Mhm.
examples of
mortal
this
wounds.
already from the previews, such as lethal hits, which is all critical hits count as or automatically wound the target. That is what
Perfect.
Born Soldiers does.
And then you know how many times I ask people when they're playing out, hey, do your sixes do anything? Because it feels like their sixes should. I mean, yeah, me and New York were just playing Sigmar, and I was like, do your sixes do? Now I can just say, hey, do you crit? And that sounds cooler. And that's the whole
Mhm.
point, is sounding cooler, right? When we play 40k.
And I mean, it is a very, it's like, I think that's kind of the idea behind 10th edition is making it more, more transparent. Like the word critical hit is very easy to understand. It's universal amongst plenty of board games, plenty of tabletop RPGs. Everyone understands what a critical hit is, but most people wouldn't know what the hell exploding six is. What does that mean? So
The
the
word
word.
explode, though, is good. We always
Oh
could
yeah,
use the
no, it's
word more
fantastic,
explode.
but
Yeah.
you need to have it explained to you. But critical hit is just like, oh, it's
Yeah.
better than normal hit. So I think it's a
Universal
good keyword.
languages.
Exactly. And I think
Totally.
that's really, really important for a game like this with so many kind of numbers and jargon that can kind of confuse people.
And that's the other thing. So far we haven't seen, like, we've seen a lot of big changes that, especially the deep strike and other people's. Anytime you do something in someone else's turn is a huge change to the game. But it's not trying to make us relearn the game. So anybody that went from 7th to 8th, it's definitely not looking like we're anywhere near that point. But yeah, this looks like a big. So far, I'm seeing the biggest addition change to this is obviously what psychic phase is gone. No more psychic phase. Which means no more deny. We haven't talked about that. No more deny. There's no psychic phase. and psychic abilities are like a weapon now, and then the other psychic abilities are like a buff or ability that you do. And I haven't found anything about denying a spell. I think that's
I
just a relic of the past.
I feel like it might be assigned to certain units with the kind of stratagems that were moved to units. So maybe a psyker librarian type character will have a deny stratagem
I don't
baked
think
into their
so. I
data
think it's going
sheet.
to be abilities. Maybe you could be right. Like maybe they'll have a link to it. We'll have to see more examples. But as far as I can tell, like if you're going to use your psychic shooting attack, that's just in the shooting phase. It doesn't deny. I
However,
will not be denied. What?
However, we do see later in this book that anti-psyker is a specific keyword, and we have seen a librarian will give a feel no pain 4 to the unit he is attached with versus psychic weapons.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and then also psychic weapons will hurt you on some of them too. Yeah, there's a so psychic is a key phrase. So they definitely and there might be some form of deny or some kind of interaction with
Maybe
it,
it's
but
like an
the
invuln specifically for psychic damage that will be spread along different units. That's probably why they're going to do it rather than like a baked in stratagem into a data sheet.
like
Speaking of
denies were
this,
there in third edition. On that, that's like one of the things I don't think that's changed. I've always had my denies, but yeah, this is interesting. I'm all on board. I'll see how this goes. What were you gonna say?
speaking of that, scrolling down a little bit, we see the inflict damage step, and we see feel no pain and deadly demise. Feel no pain is exactly as it was in ninth edition, where it anytime a unit would suffer damage, it takes a basically a save against that damage, and if it equals or exceeds, then it ignores the damage. Deadly demise is the now genericized keyword for exploding monsters or vehicles that would deal damage. It now always triggers on a 6. The every unit within 6 inches now suffers the number of mortal wounds
I like
donated
that.
by the
So it's a set
deadly
number,
demise
right?
rule. Hmm.
Yeah, because like I remember I was playing against somebody at a game store, and it was my first game ever with my Tesseract vault, and I didn't know a Tesseract vault blew up so big, and I put it right in my Necron army. Thing blew up, and it's like explodes for 2d6 mortals to everything, and I rolled two sixes. So I did 12 mortal wounds to my whole army. I hadn't even gone yet. So I just got done setting my army, and like I painted this thing for so long, set it up, and then just 12 mortal wounds to everything, and I didn't even get to move. But yeah, that's it. I like that a lot. But we did skip over a section here that you put, and that's the saving throw. And I think there's something big here, which is a saving throw can never be modified more than +1. So it says more than +1, but it doesn't say more than -1. So there's going to be probably ways to make people's armor bad, but cover gives you +1 save, right?
Correct.
So that means if I have a spell that says +1 save, that's not going to work if I'm in cover. Also, that go to ground that you have that gives you +1 to your save, um, that won't stack with this because you basically have that active. But not being able to buff your save. What about a storm shield? Like a storm shield's going to have to be cooked in. If I have a Terminator with a Power Fist and Stormbolter, and I have a Terminator with a Storm Shield, that Storm Shield's not going to give him +1 armor because the if he's in cover. But it would
That's
basically work
interesting.
as shields might work as cover outside of cover. Maybe we'll see a world with less terrain because there's a lot of terrain on the board right now. And if there's
That is
a movable cover,
that
yeah,
is interesting because a lot of AdMech stratagems they have a stratagem that gives light cover to a terrain piece in your deployment zone, and you can give light cover to light cover, which gives you a 2+ save.
not anymore because
Not
you
anymore. It
cannot
seems like
stack that.
it's limited. So
Hmm.
it is very interesting. Very good you pointed it out. It is
Yeah,
huge.
and that's why they had to take away Armor of Contempt rule that Space Marines had because it got too out of control with cover because saves get ridiculous when they stack because of the final part of a dice shave, and it's the final section of a dice shave, so it's really a big one to, improve or disapprove, right? No. Debuff, whatever.
Maybe
The
it's the way they're kind of mitigating the whole less killy explosive combat nature of ninth edition. They're kind of making it so that your saves can never really become ridiculous auto two ups, three ups.
exactly. No, that's the whole problem. So when AdMech, if you say you play AdMech, when AdMech were out of control and they said they were going to finally address them, the thing they thought they were going to do was limit uh buffs to core units to only 2 possible buffs. Because people, that's the whole point of this game. Is somebody's like, oh, how do I take this and break it? So if you can't get more than +1 to hit, which is how we play right now in 40k, you can't have +2 to hit. But what you can do is you can totally get +2 to hit by just taking +1 to hit and combining it with exploding sixes. That's the exact same thing as being +2 to hit. And people are starting to figure that out now. I break that all the time, and it's excessive. There's a reason why you can't be +2 to hit, but you can't stop me from getting +2 to hit. I'm just going to figure out another way to do it. And exploding sixes is the way they gave me to do it. And that's what they're trying to limit on more things. And I enjoy the limiters. I think most things should be limited to +1 maximum. Even wound rolls, everything. And it makes things more situational, and it makes things you don't have to really try to make the stars align, and you can still play with, if you're a bad player, like even a broken clock is right twice a day, so like you can still have that RNG to it that makes it feel like a war game.
One's always applied after any normal
Yes,
damage, or was
always
it?
comes last.
So yeah. Just want to make sure it, because I think the keywording is it takes mortal wounds in addition to any other damage on
Yeah,
certain
and then the
weapons.
mortals come after. So some things will do, like on a 6 it does a mortal wound, or like haywire grenades will hit you really lightly, but then if they hit you, they do mortal wounds, kind of thing. Those
Yeah.
mortal wounds come after the rest of the gun. So if I shoot a haywire blaster at you, you have to take all the regular shots, and then once all that's done, then in addition you just take 3. But like mortal wounds are our best way to get through invulns. So when invulns get too crazy, that's how you can deal with it. So charge phase. Charge phase. What do we got changes here? Charging with a
It's
unit
pretty
can't
much
do
the
it. Yeah,
same.
it's pretty much the same. Do you have to declare your target and everything?
Yeah.
Um,
Select
yeah.
eligible units, select targets, make charge roll, make charge move, repeat the next eligible units.
All right.
It does
And if
say
you
here,
fail
it does say
your,
here the charge bonus keyword. Each time a unit makes a charge move until the end of the turn, the unit has to fight first ability, which I don't think was ever really clarified. It was just
that's a
sort of,
good point. It was just kind of assumed like they go first,
yeah,
but now they have fight first. So
it is
chargers
called the
have fight.
charge bonus.
Yeah. So that means it's I think that's a good clarification.
Again,
Um,
more visibility. It's like with the critical hits, with the exploding sixes being renamed to critical hits, and then charge bonus is now fight first.
I met good players, like people who know this game really well, that have seen like, oh, I have fight first, and think they go before charging, and I have to explain to them like, no, I have fight first too because I charge. No, I have actual fight, and that's now it's clear. So I think it's easier for new people to learn the game. And honestly, if we all love
Exactly.
this hobby, like I know we want this game to be super competitive, we want our armor to be super cool, but number one thing is we want more people to join this game. The more people that play this game, the
Exactly.
more 40k video games we're gonna get, the more cooler models we're gonna get, the more money that's just involved in the hobby that we love.
I mean, look
So,
at me. I've only been playing for what, 4 months now, and I'm becoming less of a shitter every day.
and you're already playing Sigmar too. Like they've got you by the hooks, man. They're just dragging you around. And yeah, that's how we know it's a good game. Video games can't do this. I've been playing 40k now for what, it's got to be close to 24, 25 years. I started when I was 12, and I'll be 36 this year. So like I was homeschooled, and that's all I did. 40k all the time. Fuck school. This is my school, War
It
Academy.
says it says here at the bottom, if the charge is successful, each model makes a charge move less than or equal to the charge roll. Normal. The move must move into base to base contact.
Oh, so hang on. Yeah, that's a good eye. So you're saying, let me, where I'm
There's
just gotta
no
catch up
longer
here.
engage in range. You need to be, well, maybe it's just
There
for the
is
whole
engagement
unit.
range.
Maybe it's just for the whole unit. You need to be base to base contact for the charge to be completed, and then units in the back
Because
can
I
hit.
finish charges .9 away all the time. Are you saying I can't do this anymore? I'm trying to.
Correct. If you can move into into base to base, you must.
What if
Yeah.
I can? If I roll a 7 and I'm 7.9 away, so basically like 8 inches on the nose, does my 7 make it?
Yes,
So
it should
no,
because you make it to engagement range, but you can't make it to base to base.
Okay,
yeah.
because I
So
went
you,
7.9, repeating
yeah.
9 forever. Okay, which is
So
the
so
same as
now
8.
you need. So now engage in range no longer matters for charges. It needs to be base to base,
Okay. Huh.
which is the way I thought it functioned until like 2 days ago.
I mean, it makes more sense, but here's the thing I don't like. uh, when you've played this game a lot, the more you've played this game, the more of a master of the charge phase you become. This is
Exactly. Yeah.
like people who are kind of intermediate players like to think that the movement phase is the most important, but it's really, I mean, the movement phase is the most important. I take that back. But the charge phase is when you know you're fighting somebody good. So when you're at a tournament and you're up against Joe Schmo and you don't know this guy and you just saw him do some crazy shit with the charge phase, you got to put your guard up because you're playing against a really good player. And that means maybe don't order that next beer. And that's a really important thing I've learned at a tournament.
Yeah. So I think this base to base contact with an enemy model, if possible.
That's a
Um,
simplification of the
yeah.
charge phase, and I don't know if I like that. I love my charge phase shenanigans, and I can do like these things, and people look at me and go, "What did you just do?" I have a
I
video,
think
my just a tip on how you can get like a 36-inch charge with orcs. Um, yeah, I don't know if that's going to be quite as much a thing. I guess I could do it with the other models. It's not
I think
that much farther.
it is just a simplification, kind of a clarification of how they want the game to function now. Because again, they said they wanted to reduce the killiness, so kind of movement
Yeah, but not.
shenanigans.
I'll reduce the killiness of guns, please. Reduce the killiness of
Yeah.
like I want my units to be able to do something. If you charge my corn berserkers with your squad of marines and just rolled really well, like you got away unscathed, you've charged corn berserkers. No one charges corn berserkers and doesn't have a scratch to show from it. Like that feels weird, and that is one thing I like better about Age of Sigmar is the whole more you go I go kind of thing. But
Yeah.
they need to reduce the killy power of shooting and not make. I don't like anything that makes my melee worst. So, but let's move on. Maybe we're in a guns edition, like we are at the end of every edition.
I
But
think it is just a it's something to keep an eye on. Maybe they'll FAQ it, maybe it is just how they want the game to function now, but let's move on.
so far, I see Chaos Demons are just trying to burn this book right now because I don't think Chaos Demons are digging this book. But we haven't seen their rules as of right now, right? I haven't
Grey
seen them.
Knights too.
Grey Knights too. Yeah. The well, Grey Knights have guns. They have. I mean, I don't know how their psychic's gonna work, but yeah, the pure
In
melee
the shooting
armies.
phase,
I want to
I'd
see
assume.
melee, more melee, charging over terrain. The models can 2-inch stuff. Same
Yep.
shit.
Same as
Different
movement, you
toilet.
ignore 2 inches of terrain on a charge.
Yep, charging up. Somebody's mic just beeped, but it's okay. Don't worry. Um, Mori. We have a new person who just showed up. Our Grey Knight player, Morimato. Moriyama. I can't even say his name. Morimato the Tomato.
Mori Manato.
There we go. The yeah. Can you tell us? He's got a very thick Canadian accent. Um, pile-in moves. The pile-in 3 inches. Make it's closer to the closest enemy model. Cool. I like the 3-inch thing. It looks like that's all
And
the same.
remember, and in
And
base
base
to
to
base
base.
contact. Again,
Meh.
same rules
So
as charge.
okay, what I think they're trying to do, and this is something that does confuse newer players, is when you have uh, players that say, "Hey, I'm touching you," and people are like, "Okay," and they look at you like, "Is he about to do something weird?" And like, or is he
Back
talking
rub?
about the game? Yeah, back rub. Exactly. So this started about halfway through. I'd say beginning of ninth, like halfway through ninth, where people had to constantly say, "Hey, I'm touching you here," and that meant I'm doing melee shenanigans to you. And I think with this base-to-base contact thing, they're basically forcing touches, and by
Yeah.
forcing touches, they're yeah, because you before you'd use there's a lot you could have done before, but it's before. It's the
Yeah.
before time that was ancient things. The
Just below in the making melee attacks, and the model can fight if it is in within base to base contact with another model from its own unit that is in itself base to base contact with an enemy unit. So you just need to have one model in base to base contact
and we don't
for the
have a
rest of the
rule
unit.
for base to base. Like it doesn't say base to base counts as you're within a half an inch or something like that. It
Exactly.
is
Could just
literal.
be engagement range. It could be actual physical base to
We
base.
passed engagement range already, didn't we? That's charging a
Uh,
unit.
Engagement range is never clarified in these leaks. We only can assume
What?
that engagement range is an engagement range, 1 inch, and that base to base is specifically base to base.
You
I'm
know that
assuming
if this is
I'm
the
ass-
second time, Horace, that you've given me fake 10th edition rules, I swear to God, I will.
What
I'll have to
if
fly over to your house
what
and we'll have a
if
chat.
engagement range is being base to base with
I
another
think
enemy
you might be
model?
right. I'm just joking with Horace. I almost just for the record, I almost made a video on a bunch of fake 10th edition rules like 2 months ago. But yeah, Horus is the leak king. That's what I've learned. The
The god of
Horus plays
knowledge.
Tyranids. I didn't know that either. But Horus is
He
with us here
does?
in the channel. Yeah, Chaos
Is he
Scum.
No
here in
idea.
the room with us right now?
I just
I
heard
thought I
him
smelled a
talk.
bug.
Pretty sure it's the real Horus. I don't know. His name in my chat is Horus, and he seems to have connections in 40k. I'm assuming it's the real Horus, guys. Charging. So moving on. Yeah, charging's done. It's basically base to base. I'm putting all these pictures up for you guys. Leave in the comments anything we get wrong. I'm sure some of you are gonna study these pictures, and then please tell me where I'm wrong because that's how we all learn. I love it when people tell me I'm wrong.
It's a moment to learn.
But I'll argue it. I'll argue it if I don't think I'm wrong, and my friends find that incredibly annoying.
It's been
So they
charged.
have split it into the different categories, but since all your chargers have fight first, you're still gonna pick the one
Exactly,
that
they
goes
get to
first.
go.
It's really no different, but
It is not
yeah,
different,
they're
but
gonna
it does
invest in.
have the keyword fights first, which is again more transparency, more clarification.
I guess if you had a lot of fight, I mean that's a thing. Like Slanesh demons, I remember back in the day, they would use nothing but demonettes with fight first. So if you charged them with more than one unit, you would get screwed. No pun intended.
Mm.
They would you'd activate your one unit and they'd be like, cool, I get to activate all of my army before you get to activate your next unit that charged.
I
That's
think
no longer a thing, which means we might see fight first armies again. Cross your fingers for Dark Eldar with all fight first on everything. That's how it
I
used to
think we
be.
might have some interesting interactions with leadership units that give auras of fight last. So you could charge into a unit, you get forced to fight last, and then you get to fight first with a unit that's
We
screening.
definitely have some auras of fight last right now. Like Death Guard was the first book of ninth edition, and they brought the biggest aura I think that we have in the game of fight last. But yeah, having more fight first, having too much fight first right now. The reason why entire armies can't be given that is because it's too powerful. Like when we had the problem with Slash Demons, now we have the we can put fight first back in the game again, and we can give lots of units fight first. I'm thinking elves, and it won't break the game. But yeah, let's talk about the actual fight phase, because this is where the blood's drawn, right? Like you shoot people with laser guns, they evaporate and turn into dust or whatever they do. But this is what we all play for. The swords are drawn, chain swords are revving, power swords are lit up. We're gonna go over the fight phase, and if you guys have played against good players and you're kind of an intermediate player, you've probably been very confused by some of the places that they've touched you. Um, They've changed a few things in the fight phase. Horace, why don't you go over that?
They've largely left the fight phase the same, but where they've started making changes are quite important, specifically in the consolidation part of the fight phase, where now it remains the 3 inches after you have fought. Each model that moves in their consolidation move must end closer to the closest enemy model in base to base contact if it's possible. Must stay within unit coherency and with engagement range, at least one enemy unit if possible. If it is not possible, i.e., that you have slain the unit that you're fighting with, the each model in that unit can now move towards the closest objective marker, but
Ooh.
it must end within engagement range or within range of the objective marker and still in unit coherency. If it cannot end within range of the objective marker or within engagement range of an enemy unit or base to base with an enemy model, then it cannot consolidate.
Okay. So basically what you're saying is big thing they changed here is where it says, Talia Pylon, you must move closer to the nearest enemy model. Now you have to move as close as possible to the nearest
It
enemy
has to
model.
be base to base
So you're
contact.
touching. That means touch. You have to
Again,
touch. They're
base to base. Yeah.
forcing us to touch each other. We're removing
What a time to be
the
alive.
I guess yeah, when other people watch me play Warhammer that don't know how to play Warhammer, they always laugh when I say the word unit, and they always laugh when I say I'm touching you. So I think they're trying to we still have the unit. Like my unit's bigger than your unit, but yeah,
Well, why don't we measure base to base?
Perfect. Nice. The but yeah, we got a little bit of the big brain stuff is taken out of the fight phase, but still, I like that the big brain stuff that you were using in the fight phase, you can now apply this to the deep strike in your opponent's turn, and your vehicle usages, and we got new keywords and stuff. So there'll be other things that you can focus on. It's not just the strong survive in the fight phase anymore. Hopefully, melee gets stronger though, because I felt like the reason we had to learn those things was because of the fact that melee was a little bit lackluster and we need to be fighting on objectives. So I'm scrolling down now through the make attacks.
Just looks like data sheets.
So yeah, this looks like pretty much the same, and we've been going over this a while, and right now it's 3:30 in the morning. That's how much we love you guys. We're gonna skip over this, but go ahead and pause the video. You can check out whatever it says there. Consolidation. That's the same, right? But nearest to the move as close as possible. Yeah, we
that's
just
what
talked
we were
about
talking about. But it's sort of
And
like a miniature
pylon.
show stealer succubus, where you can move on to an objective if there's no nearby unit.
I like that because that's kind of usually what I was doing anyways. And
Yeah.
it makes my units hungry for objectives just like I am, and we have that shared love now. So moving on, fast dice rolling. I don't want to read this, but if anybody wants to read this, there's a glare on it. This one doesn't have the shadow of the penis. The data
H.P.
sheet.
Lovecraft's
We've
Shadow of
already
the
seen-
Penis.
We've already seen basically all of this. The next thing
the
that
penis
would
is back.
possibly, yeah, next thing that would
it's Horace's
possibly.
penis.
Oh my god!
I'm just kidding.
You better cut that. I
said that at the end of the video because otherwise you'd be thinking about it the whole video. But yeah, go ahead. Tell me about data sheets.
The most important thing is we've already seen what the data sheets show off, but the interesting thing is that our abilities and psychic weapons and abilities are detailed here. Our abilities are obviously our abilities. A model with an R ability is always within range of its own R ability. They've now clarified that. And a unit can be affected by more than one R at a time, but if a unit is in range of the same R ability more than once, the ability only applies to that unit once. So with the recently revealed Adeptus Mechanicus unit that reduces the objective control by 1, you will, if you're within range of 2, you're only going down by 1 instead of 2. Finally, we have the psychic weapons and abilities that get shown off. Such weapons and abilities are tagged with the word psychic. That means a psychic phrase is now a keyword that can be used to apply other rules to them. In addition, if a psychic weapon or ability causes any unit to suffer 1 or more wounds, each of those wounds is considered to have been inflicted by a psychic attack.
Nice. You guys have seen some previewed leaks of a bunch of different data sheets. We've got the stats, so we're not going to go over too heavily. Is there anything you guys wanted to add about the data sheets?
Not from the data sheets, but we do have the weapon abilities to work through.
There we go.
Pistols, as previously mentioned, are primarily used for an engagement range. Otherwise, they have not changed much. Torrent weapons are, as we expected, to be auto-hitting. I believe those were revealed. We see a new keyword, which is Lance. Lance gain +1 to wound when they charge.
Oh, cool. All right, let's. What's a lance unit? We got Shining Spears. What's another lance unit?
Custodes Bikers.
There you go. And then the Death Krieg guys on the horses.
Exactly. Those are all 3 great examples.
Yeah.
I guess
the
AdMech horses. Maybe they'll have a lance variant. I'm not sure if they have one or not.
The Squig boys. They got lances, don't they?
Yeah. I don't think they'll have the lance keyword, but
Maybe.
they might.
We'll see. And we got so everything's pretty similar stuff. Abilities, keywords, unit composition, and other rules. War gear. You guys are feel free to pause the video here, and you can read these over in depth. But as far
we
as
do have another new weapon keyword that's pretty exciting: precision. As you've previously noticed, leaders can now attach to squads or units. Precision now is the attacking model's player now can target that character in the unit The attacks are not allocated immediately to the bodyguards. Instead, they can be allocated to the character if the attacker so chooses so.
So we'll see if this is on more than just snipers, because we have this rule pretty much on snipers right now, and people aren't spamming it. No one's really. There's not very many. You have a Vindicare assassin, and people don't even use him most of the time. But maybe we'll get some cool interactions with that rule. Indirect
Speaking
fire.
of that cool rule, Tyranids get that as a faction-wide ability if they have
Ooh,
a
wait,
specific detachment.
really?
Yes.
Really? That sounds
Your
interesting.
30 Termagants can go up to Abaddon's unit and stab him to death.
My Termagants are all still armed with Devourers, so we'll see if that's a.
And those Devourers now have precision.
Ooh, that's a lot of shots. That could be fun. That could definitely be fun. Especially if someone uses a big commander like Gilliman or something, right? Because that'll go over even through that.
Indeed. Gilliman is a lone operative. He cannot attach to
Oh,
units.
so precision. Will precision override lone operative is what I'm wondering.
No, it will not. Precision only
Mm,
overrides the leader keyword.
so it's precise, but it's not like
You cannot
100%
shoot through
precise.
lone.
It's
Incorrect.
roughly precise. Rough
Roughly
precision. Yeah.
Blast was revealed vaguely before. You add 1 to the attack's characteristic for every 5 models in the target unit, rounding down.
Rounding down. But yeah, it was minimum 3. Ugh,
Minimum 3. Now it
not
is just
330 in the morning.
d6 plus 1 if there's 5 models, or d6 plus 2 if there's 10.
It's simple enough.
Simple enough, yes.
So I'm not gonna lie, Horace. I've not looked at much of the leaks at all because like I've done this before and like they're gonna leak stuff, but I don't have the whole picture, so I've avoided a lot of the things. For other viewers who haven't looked at much of the leaks, is there any other big shout outs you want to do for like Melta or Heavy, indirect fire, things like that?
GW themselves has revealed Heavy, they revealed Melta, they revealed Indirect most recently. The most exciting ones are the last 2 on the page, on the following page, Anti and Hazardous. I'll start with Anti because it's the simplest. We've seen this before. They explain it quite clearly. But what I want to draw your attention to is the example. They specifically call out Anti-Psyker 2 up. That means that they expect, or at least will be using, units with Psyker targeting, such as Scissors of Silence, or perhaps Nick, you've played at 40k longer than I have. What are units that specifically target Psykers?
Oh man, there's a lot. So for our Dark Angel fans, you got Lazarus is the guy everybody uses. He's got that sword that counters demons. You'll get a lot of things like yeah, Grey Knights have a lot of things that are meant to do more damage against more damage against demons, more damage against psychers. Like that's what it looks like anti is going to be here. It's like ways to just counter things better, which is a great addition to the game.
However, this does make my Tyranid chitin tremble in its little booties, because my Hive Tyrants are going to probably be quite high toughness, and they are Psykers. So
That's
you will
true.
be able to wound a Hive Tyrant on a 2-up and have it count as a critical wound as well.
A lot of the stuff that is anti-psyker has something anti-psyker, but their example is psyker specific. The thing that's
Yes.
interesting is you could change this wording to be anti-whatever. What if I want anti-walker? Maybe you've got like, let's think about one thing we've all seen is a snow speeder take out a ATST by just throwing a harpoon around its legs. Anti-walker. So there's things that could do that, and we have a lot of units that have weapons that are harpoons. Orcs have it. Even there's a giant knight that has a anti-tank harpoon. These could have all kinds of cool interactions. Anti-demon could be a thing for some Grey Knight stuff. Right? It's just gonna insert whatever word.
Absolutely.
Like
I
you
think that
counter
they
this keyword
will.
anti-biker because maybe you throw down spikes on the ground. Who the fuck
You could
knows?
even have going back to what you're saying, where you've got speeders taking out ATSTs. You could have anti-Titan as well, and also
Hmm.
do Titans get the Walker keyword? Will certain Titans have the Walker keyword?
Unless Titan they might get Titan and Walker. Maybe Titan's just bigger than that. But
Maybe the
yeah,
smaller Titans get Walker as a keyword.
the thing that I think is interesting about this that I kind of makes me think why didn't they do this beforehand is this is a good way to fix the meta. So say, for example, this unit is running amok and it's just people are taking this new unit came out, it's too strong. We have Tyrannic War Veterans coming for Space Marines. These will probably have anti-Tyrannid. And you could take these to, for people that are, if you're having problems with your Tyrannid friend, um, just being able to counter things easier makes it so you don't feel so stuck when you're playing Tau and you're like, okay, I'm gonna shoot the Terminators with my AP0. Oh, that didn't work. Or I'm gonna shoot with my railgun. Oh, they're big, my big plasma guns. Oh, they're invulnerable. Save fixed them. And there's they come kill me in combat, and it's just like fuck this game. But this is a cool way to fix your problem, which is something new people struggle with. But they're like, I can't beat my friend. He's spamming too much of this. Well, why don't you go anti that thing? Simple answer
Hmm.
for a simple question.
Maybe there's
Exactly.
kind of modular kind of keywords you could slot in and out of certain weapons. You could have a weapon like maybe, for example, a Dark Lance might be anti-Titan, anti-vehicle, and then a Bright Lance will be anti-Walker, anti-vehicle.
And this also, speaking of the Bright Lance and Dark Lance especially, they're introducing Toughness 9 lately in the 8th edition, and Dark Eldar don't have Strength 9. You have to take a Void Raven Bomber to get Strength 9 attacks, so you can't deal with that. But if you have maybe anti this or anti that, you can now they can fix problems. And they
Mm,
FAQs the biggest reason, guys, why I think they're changing all these keywords, and this is hands down like what Games Workshop's mindset is the data slates. The data slates have been going over so well, and I wish we had data slates back in the day. But when they change data slates, they can't change like core essentials of a unit. But we might be able to say, well, fire dragons are really bad for Eldar right now. And Games Workshop can look at fire dragons and go, well, they're bad because the meta is this. Well, let's add anti Walker to fire dragons. Let's add anti this. Let's add devastating wounds to that. Let's add this keyword to a unit that's underperforming. And we now have a way to balance the game that isn't adjusting
exactly,
points. And
exactly.
that is
Especially
huge.
especially with the whole online kind of front for all of
Mm-hmm.
10th edition where they can change things at a whim and community posts. You could even have a community run data slate where people change the meta for their kind of local tournament they could run online, or some sort of kind of smaller local tournament that they run themselves. Like you could really change up the meta. You could go, oh wait, now Dark Lances have the anti-Titan keyword, or Haywire Blasters have anti-vehicle and anti-walker, something like
Narrative
that.
wise too, I mean, there'll be ways where I bet you maybe there's a warlord trait that comes out and you're like put it's called adaptive, the new adaptive physiology. You put this on your hive tyrant, and at the start of the battle you choose an anti keyword. So like you look at
Hmm,
your opponent's army and go, damn, you got a lot of vehicles. I think I'm gonna put anti vehicle on my hive tyrant. Oh,
that'd be
you have
pretty
a lot of
huge.
bikes in your army. That's a whole bike army. I better put anti bike on my hive tyrant. Maybe we're looking at something like that. That
But
could be a cool way to adapt to your opponent.
the thing I am thinking of immediately when I see anti as a keyword is an unmodified wound roll of X plus against the target is a critical wound. To me, that just reminds me of Drakari Haywire Blasters. It's
hmm
just sounds like it could potentially just be okay because they are just okay. So hopefully it's not just
Well, you
flat
got
out
two numbers to adjust
okay.
there too. You got the keyword that you can adjust to affect the balance, but then you got that secondary, and that's a future-proof way that I think they really looked at, and I'm happy about because Games Workshop is not the best at looking towards the future, and I hope we see a Games Workshop that focuses more on that, and this is a step
Hmm.
in the right direction. I like
Uh,
Speaking
these
of
keywords.
looking forward, we've got the final keyword, and that's hazardous.
hmm
So before, whenever you fired a plasma weapon, any of your hit rolls of 1 would deal mortal wounds or destroy the unit. Now, they've changed things up. Hazardous is after you fire a hazardous weapon, the unit and the, or rather the model must make a hazardous weapon test. You roll a d6. And on a roll of 1, the model that fired instantly dies. If they are a character, monster, or vehicle, they only suffer only 3 mortal wounds.
Yes,
S-
and this is a good change. This is a healthy change. So like, we got stuff like just I haven't looked at the new Karn the Betrayer too much, but Karn Betrayer overcharges his plasma. He doesn't kill himself anymore, right?
He shouldn't.
Yeah, but either way, we don't have to worry about that anymore because this is the new overcharge rules, and there'll be other things I think that'll have hazardous. When I first read hazardous, I thought it was gonna be a terrain thing, and I got scared. But yeah, extra attacks. Does extra attacks cap at +1? I know a lot of things are capping at +1. Does that doesn't seem to, right?
It has not specified. The
Okay.
last time we saw this was with the Keeper of Secrets, I believe.
Just having D3 plus attacks and stuff like that, I want that stuff to stay. What about +1 to and -1 to wound?
That is still staying the same.
So you can do +2 to wound?
No, you cannot.
That's a big change. Right now you can do +2 to wound. So certain things, yeah, that's good. We shouldn't have more than one of abilities, even when they're disguised as other abilities.
So extra attacks using the Keeper of Secrets as a baseline. Whenever you make attacks with the Keeper of Secrets, it has extra attacks on its Ritual Knife and its Snapping Claws. So you will make your 6 attacks with its
Oh,
Wit Stealer
so it's
Sword.
like Age of Sigmar that way.
It's like Age of Sigmar, or it's more like the demonic weapons of 9th edition demons. You always make those extra attacks.
Yeah, like the malefic weapons. Yeah, the totally. I'm all on. I like that. I definitely like that. The I'm loving all these keywords too. So far, yeah. There's a little bit more to come. We don't know what detachments look like. There's so much more to come. And so, I mean, if you're not subscribed, maybe you won't know early. You'll know when everybody else does, like a pleb. But we got these rules early for you. Hope you enjoyed them. It is 4 a.m. Is there anything else? Yeah, closing thoughts, guys. What do you guys think? Are you excited? Is there anything?
Excited.
What do you miss the most, and what are you most excited for? Let me
I miss
know.
my father the most.
Your what?
I miss my father the most.
Your fodder? Well, okay. So you miss your fodder. What makes you think there's going to be so much less fodder?
Oh, it's father, as in my dad.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was a joke.
I thought you meant like cannon fodder.
No,
like,
no.
I don't have screens or something. Okay.
Don't worry. You'll adjust to the accent.
Gotcha.
But again, I just like to point out the kind of clarification and the visibility with the exploding sixes. It's now called sustained hits instead. And it's probably been covered before, but again, it's just to reiterate the point of it is nice to see it is now have a specific word. It's not just extra attacks. It is now sustained hits X instead of 6 scores additional hits.
And for fun with that, we've seen sustained hits D3.
Yes. And that's where I think that's what my favorite thing is the fact that they're not just giving us the keywords, they're giving us a keyword and then this number, and this number is making things interesting so I can tell someone like, oh, my guy does this, and they're like, oh, okay, he's really good at this, he's got this number, and now you can really you have a number to how crazy your guy is at doing said thing. I think that's one of my favorite parts. What about you, Horace? So what is your favorite change to this edition?
I just generally like the clarification and the moving to the keywords. That just makes the entire system so much more adaptable and usable. I think the Battle Shock as well is a really interesting mechanic that I need to see in play before I can really pass judgment on.
I didn't even think of that. Cool. Totally. And as far as there's also things that I know of making us all nervous. So I don't know how much I'm a fan of this whole base to base thing. And this whole I like being able to big brain my melee phase, but I also like being able to deep strike shit in my opponent's turn. That's cool too. So I don't know how I feel about that one. We'll see how it plays. What about you, York? Is there anything that's a little bit making you worried, especially as a newer player? Because you said you've only been playing for 4 months now. Is there anything here that seems maybe too confusing or just distasteful for someone that is newer to the game?
I genuinely think it's a huge step in the right direction. I mean, I'm not a very smart person, but the game itself is inherently confusing. There are terminology and terms that just don't really make any sense. Like, for example, with the 5-up feel no pain against wounds, you have a differentiation between wounds and then a 5-up feel no pain against mortal wounds. That implies a differentiation between the two. So one is for wounds and one is for mortal wounds, but it implies that one works for one and one works for the other. But wounds, feel no pain on wounds is much better than just a feel no pain on mortal wounds. So having this kind of extra clarification on keywords and what keywords mean is sort of future-proofing the game, and I feel like 10th edition will be around for quite some time. It's sort of a modular design where you can kind of make changes as the community changes and adapts and grows. And I think it is just a great step in the right direction. But then again, it could be a horrible mess depending on what
That's true.
codexes look like. We
Exactly.
still have yet to see how armies work with these rules. It could be awful. It could be absolute tripe.
Power
It
creep
could
is a thing. It is a thing. When Games Workshop needs to
exactly.
sell a model, they will sell that. It will sell you that model, even if you don't play that faction. They'll let you ally it in or something. But yeah,
But I am excited. I am excited for as a new player again, just the whole boarding patrol and boarding actions becoming kind of their own games. That's kind of a great way to introduce people into 40K outside of Kill Team. That was sort of the go-to way of getting people into the game. A lot of people recommended to me, "Oh, you don't have enough time or money, or it's too complicated for you. You should try Kill Team instead." But now with the boarding patrols and I can't remember the name of the other box set, but they were implying that you could have a what's the name? Combat Patrol, is that it? The
yeah.
600 point or the
Usually
1000
the
point
in like the
box?
boxes that they come
Yeah,
in.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
making a game mode specifically for those boxes.
And
So I
hopefully
think
that
it
means
is,
they balance them because I know a lot of people
yeah,
that start the game by going like, "Hey, I'm going to buy a combat patrol box and you buy a combat patrol box and we're going to fight each other." And Magic the Gathering has the same problem where one's way balanced
yeah.
more than the other. But
So
another question for you, real fast, of someone that's new. You've been playing for 4 months, and I've met you through the Discord. And now you're on the internet. Look at that. How do you feel about having to relearn a bunch of rules after just having to learn all these rules like within the past 4 months, and now you've got a whole new slew of rules to learn? Like, how do you feel about that as a new player?
I mean, it's a load of weight off my shoulders because the rules are a lot less complex. So it's going to be nice to kind of decompress, especially learning factions like Drakari, Admech, and Orcs, kind
Perfect.
of more
Yeah,
kind of complicated
you
things.
got some army ADD going on there. Like 4 months
Oh, for
in, you might
sure,
want
for
to pick
sure.
one before you do four, like an
That's
army a
half the
month.
fun.
I know it is, and then all of a sudden a room of your house is dedicated to it, like mine. But yeah, the it's a game that we'll be playing for a long time, longer than any video game that you'll ever play. That's for sure. The Anybody have anything else to add? Horace, you got anything else you want to add?
I've got a little bit. The thing I'm most concerned about is how they end up resolving psychic abilities.
Ooh,
As
I
a
know.
Tyranid, Eldar, and Thousand Sun enjoyer, I really liked my psychic phase.
Yeah, and you're totally on something there where, as I know I've mentioned Age of Sigmar a lot lately, but as someone who's played a lot of 40K, Age of Sigmar really has some good ideas, including the fact of army individuality and the personality that each of our armies have. I want to feel like I'm playing Eldar when I'm playing Eldar. I don't want to feel like I'm
Exactly.
playing Dark Eldar when I'm playing Eldar. And I do like the changes, like Votann players are pissed about their ballistic skill. Well, cool. You don't feel like a Space Marine anymore because before when I played against Votan, it felt like I was just playing a Space Marine with slightly different rules. And like that wasn't fun. And that is one thing I'm a little bit worried about is the generalization of some of these rules. I don't want my army to feel like my opponent's army with just different aesthetics. I have a different
Yeah.
I
skin
completely
on the same
agree.
Yeah,
stats.
I think that is something everyone wants. They want their armies to feel unique and different. They
Hmm.
don't want this kind of muddling of the waters and
And that is a problem. Like we needed that in eighth edition, we needed that in ninth edition, and Games Workshop's like, well, here's Votan. So now here's another army that makes our armies feel even more less unique because there's more things like
hmm
us. I want to feel really, really unique. And if someone's never played against my army before, I want it to feel really exotic for them in a not
yeah,
sexual way, but in a like intrigue way when you're watching like you're studying an ancient or a new creature type of thing.
yeah.
That's what is fun.
Like even for me, jumping um jumping from Drakari to Harlequins to Admech to Orcs, they all kind of feel different. But then I started learning Votan, and they're very straightforward compared to every other faction. They got beam weapons, they got judge tokens. That's sort
They
of where
also
the
have
complexity
a
ends.
second half of the codex coming, and that's where
Well,
we're
yeah,
gonna really know where
that's
Games Workshop's
exactly.
priorities lie.
And I
In
think that's gonna
Yeah,
be the most interesting thing. And I think 10th edition should create sort of a reverse power creep, kind of a stamp in sort of the meta for each faction, hopefully. And nothing is kind of it's no longer a massive gray. It's more individual colors, and everything is sort of represented in a different way, and everything feels unique and kind of different, and everything has its purpose within those codices. But we'll see.
Yep, and we'll know what we got to see the units. We'll learn a lot more. There's more to come. We'll see what's in the future. Make sure you subscribe so you can see a little bit ahead of your friends. You can look like the smart guy in the room for once. And stay tuned for our next video.